I've got no message from Jason. Just hang on. I've got hang on. Something's coming through. Live. Okay, welcome everybody to this electronic meeting of Council. This meeting is being streamed and recorded, and the voices and images of those participating in the meeting may be captured as part of the recording. I'd like to acknowledge the original custodians of the lands that we are all meeting from tonight, and pay respects to elders past and present, and welcome any descendants who may be watching the meeting this evening. As councillors, we've all taken an oath to carry out our duties in the best interests of the people of Indigo Shire, and to do this in a fair and impartial manner. We're all committed to exercising the council's powers and functions to the best of our skills and judgment. Are there any apologies? No, we have a full board tonight. We're all here. Declarations of conflict of interest? Yes, Councillor Price.
Not with an agenda item, but I believe there's a question coming up in open forum related to a past agenda item that I've got a conflict of interest for.
All right, so Councillor, I was going to actually ask that question as the first question. So I'll just signal to the administrator to put you into a waiting room while we deal with that question. So thank you for that.
Jenny, I just wonder about apologies. Should Greg Pinkerton be one?
Oh yes, and actually thank you for that reminder. So yeah, our director for planning and corporate services is not here, and in his place we have Phil Garoni, who is acting director now. So welcome, Phil. All right, so no condolence motions. Community and council achievements. I guess we're not spending a lot of time on that at the moment, but I will just point out that in terms of council achievements, we've received some great news in the last week about funding grants that have come through from state and federal governments. So I'll go into those a bit later on, but just to say that it's really welcome news, and we haven't stopped advocating to make sure that we get support for our small businesses as well. Confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting. So the recommendation is that council confirm the minutes of the special council meeting held on the 5th of May 2020 as published on the council's website, and confirm the minutes of the confidential session also held on the 5th of May as distributed separately. Can I have someone to move that? Councillor Shepherd, do I have a seconder? Councillor Price. All those in favour? Okay, carried, thank you. Item 7.1 is suspension of standing orders regarding the open forum. So the recommendation is that standing orders be suspended to allow the open forum to be brought forward in the agenda to this item, so to the next item, 7.2, and that I can read questions to the open forum on behalf of the questioner without the requirement that the questioner or their representative be present at the meeting. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Trenery, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Murdoch. All those in favour? Carried. Okay, thanks, councillors. So that brings us to open forum, and we do have 4 questioners tonight. The first one is the one that Councillor Price has a conflict of interest in. So can the administrator please put Councillor Price into a safe place and let me know when that's happened.
Does she first need to specify the reason for a conflict?
Oh yeah, sure. Do you want to specify that, councillor? She's already gone. Okay, so just to be clear, it's because the councillor has a relationship with a family relationship with the objector to this particular decision, and the question is really just to ask that a decision that was made at last month's council meeting on the Howden Winery application be reviewed and brought back to council. I think it's important to understand that this council determines over 300 planning permit applications a year, and about a dozen or so actually come to council for a decision. So when an application does come to council, there's been a lot of reports, a lot of work done, comprehensive reports by officers and councils. In this case, a number of councils went and did a site visit. So a lot of things go into considering the decision and influencing councillors on the way they vote. Once a decision has been made, obviously if the applicant is disappointed, and that can be the case as it is in this case, then there are further actions they can take. One is that they can resubmit a reviewed planning application that has different conditions to the one that was objected to and that didn't pass. And also, of course, you can appeal the decision to VCAT. So a decision on an application can't be unmade at council. Once it's made, that's the decision, and it is then can be, as I say, you can either put in for a new permit, which will be considered on its merits, or if you don't feel that decision was right, you can appeal to VCAT. So can we have Councillor Price back in the meeting now? Thank you, Administrator.
Did you read out the question? Or?
Oh, it was quite a lengthy question, but the upshot of it was that they would like to have the decision reviewed. So I haven't read the whole thing out, as I'm not reading out any of them. I'm just reading the bit that's relevant to us to make a decision. Councillor Price back in the room, and here she comes. Hello, welcome back. All right, thank you. Now the second question has come from Jeffrey Palmer. This is in relation to a for sale sign that is at the heritage listed post office building in Beechworth that's been there for 6 months. Jeffrey's asking, will council advise the residents of Beechworth what, if any, action has been or could possibly be taken to have it removed, as it is a heritage site, and as we all know, it's a very iconic photographic opportunity on that streetscape. Jeffrey's also asking what we can do to amend the planning scheme, and how will we report on this matter. So just to give people a brief an understanding of the situation, there are exemptions made for sale signs, even in the heritage area. That's a state legislation. That's not something that Indigo Shire is able to easily change. And I believe, Councillor, CEO, that you have also had a conversation with the relevant real estate agent. So do you want to just perhaps fill people in on where we're at with that?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. So just to reiterate, any sense that perhaps we have control, over the signage in that particular location. Basically, we're governed by the Victorian planning scheme and the Victorian planning provisions. It's not something that we control. The clauses that allow these sorts of signs, for sale signs, are standard clauses right across the state. People are entitled to have a sign. If they've got property for sale, they're entitled to have one sign, and that sign has to be a certain size or less, and this is which is 10 square metres, and this sign is definitely less than 10 square metres, and they're allowed to have that sign on their property while the property is for sale or for lease, and there's no time limit on that. The only time limit there is that if once the property is sold, then it has to be removed within 7 days after it's sold or after it's let, in the case of a lease. So they're all state provisions. We've got no power. We're powerless on the legal side to change any of that. So I have personally had discussions with the real estate agent involved to ask if there's any other alternative that they could perhaps move it or whatever. They're keen to leave it where it is, obviously, because it's a high exposure site. So the owners are very, very keen to sell, and they want to sell the property. So they want to maximise their chance of sale by having a for sale sign where people can see it and not in some other place. But we could perhaps go back and talk again to the owners and to the real estate agent, perhaps to see if there's a change of heart, change of mind, whether we can find some other alternative. So, but that's what we've done so far. So I hope that answers your question, Madam Mayor.
Look, I think I've also, just to let Palmer and other interested people know, I have been a call to our heritage advisor, who I haven't heard back from yet, just to see if there's any mechanism to have some kind of exemption when things are in a sensitive heritage site. At this stage there isn't, but is there any way that we might be able to look at something like that down the track in terms of our local laws? But generally speaking, our local laws have to be subjected to the state planning scheme. So yeah, I'm happy to follow up. Councillor Goldsworthy.
Yeah, I just wonder, it's probably the court of public opinion that will have the most influence, and if we can encourage those who are concerned by it, perhaps to write local letters or write to the real estate agent just to let them know the effect that it does have on the amenity of the area and the impact it'll have on the Beechworth Township and broader area when we're trying to attract tourists back to the area.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. And as I say, while Jeffrey Palmer raised the issue here, I certainly have had many approaches by people who are asking, could we get the sign removed? So it is certainly something people feel strongly about in the main street of Beechworth. Now, this next set of questions is from Robin McLeish in relation to the railway goods shed. So there's 3 questions here. The first one is, with the railway goods shed renewal project approaching completion, how many formal expressions of interest are under consideration by council? I think I'll hand this over to the CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And if you like, I can go through the 3 questions there. The first one asks about expressions of interest. Council is currently in negotiations with one potential person who's expressed interest in that site. So those negotiations are still live.
Mm-hmm.
Second question relates to the additional $130,000 spend that was approved by council last year. Does it include the addition of toilets? No, it does not include the provision of toilets. There was an assumption made that we would take the building to a certain standard that would allow a certain level of activity there, and that any further discussion about some of the facilities, amenities and so on, kitchens and toilets and things like that, would be had with any other further provider. Some of the uses may not need toilets, so that wasn't included in the initial part of the design, but it may well come in with any landlord, whether it be the next one or landlords down, tenants, whether it be the next one or the next one's down the track, that may come at a future date. Question was asked, where would they be located? Well, obviously we'll have those negotiations when the time comes with the tenant where they'd be located, and they'd also then be sensitive to the amenity of the site as well, and we'd have to work through that at the time. The last part of his question relates to annual reporting following its opening, and whether we will report on a number of jobs created compared to what was claimed in the grant application. Whenever we do get these types of grants, we're required to report back to the grant provider on certain elements and acquit those grants. The ongoing jobs it creates aren't one of our reporting requirements, so we don't propose to do that. I also make the point that this is a long-term asset. So once this is built, this is going to be an asset for decades. So we may well have a tenant in there for the next 1, 2, 3 years, and then there'll be a different tenant after that, a different tenant after that, a different tenant after that. So they're all going to be different. So, whether we judge the economic drivers and the jobs created by the first tenant or the third or the second, I think it's really relevant in this case. We'll have a great asset there, and it'll provide benefit for many years to come.
Okay, all right.
Jenny, sorry, just on that subject.
Certainly, Councillor.
I know there's been other comments around the outer skin of that shed,
Mhm.
the old tin being covered up. I'm just wondering whether it's prudent at this time, given the previous question, if the Director of Infrastructure might be able to assist the community in understanding why the outer skin was put on, not the internal skin.
Okay, so Director Ian Ellett, do you want to just explain that?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I suppose it was what was considered the best overall in terms of retaining the integrity of the building, the heritage characteristics, but also trying to bring it to new life. So have it waterproof and being able to insulate it. We've had to fit the new iron. Now, one of the options was to just replace the iron. The design option that we came up with was to clad on the outside of that and be able to insulate in between. So when it's open and there's a tenant in there and people are able to go in, you see all of that, I suppose, character that is the building from the internal. So people won't be able to see it from the outside, but it probably came down to that was the architectural solution, the one that sort of suited the heritage advice, that we could retain the building, retain the character of the building, and within the available budget be able to achieve the structural changes.
Thank you for that. So my understanding is it'll be waterproof and it'll be warmer than a tin shed.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. And finally, the fourth question is from Peter Watkins in, I'm just trying to see where Peter comes from, but the question obviously from the Tangambalanga area. So the question is around linking the rail trail to Sandy Creek and Charleroi via Hibberson Lane. I assume the question is asking, is that going to happen? So again, I'll hand over to Director Ian Ellett. Oh, sorry, do you want to answer that, CEO?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. My intel tells me that Peter's from Sandy Creek. I hope that's right.
Oh, okay, good, thank you.
This just came through as we sort of joined the meeting, and we're just trying to recall. It indicates that this question was raised at the Tangambalanga Forum. It talks about linking rail trail to Sandy Creek. In my understanding of the North East Victoria cycling optimisation strategy, there's a long-term goal of one of the main ones was building the rail trail from Beechworth to Yakandan to Osmonds Flat as this phase, which got the funding. There is further down the track a strategy in there one day to link that then with Huon Reserve. Now that is some years down the track and quite expensive, so we're going to have to get through this phase first and get this part built, and then we'll have to keep lobbying for further expansions to that rail trail network. I think this appears to indicate a question about whether the rail trail can be linked to Sandy Creek and Charleroi. I don't believe it was part of the strategy to do that. I'm not sure how much of a deviation that is. I will suggest that there is currently a strategy in place, a tracks and trails strategy in place. So if I suggest to councillors and to Peter that I'll forward this question then to that process and whether that can be considered as part of the tracks and trails strategy that's currently in progress. So I'll make sure this is forwarded to that project so that those that are working on that strategy could consider that in the context of that strategy.
Great. Okay, good. Thank you. All right, so that's it for open forum tonight. Oh, sorry, yes, Councillor Shepherd.
Just while you're saying that, at the moment, there's a on Facebook and all the community areas, you can see that Indigo Shire has a link for you to look on maps and drop pins to discuss walking or riding trails throughout the Shire. So he's most welcome to go there and drop that, although I know Trevor will send it to the consultant as well. But and everyone else is welcome to go to that map too and drop a pin to discuss their walking or riding trail.
Yeah, thank you.
Issues.
Great, thank you for that, Councillor. Good to remind people, yeah. Okay, so I now want to ask that standing orders be resumed. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Gaffney, seconded Councillor Murdoch. All those in favour? Carried. Okay, thanks everybody. So item 8 is business arising from the previous meeting. There were questions taken on notice, particularly around the Ned Kelly Alive project, as it was known, and the answers to that are available. This was in response to questions from Joanne Griffiths, and the answers are there, and of course those answers are public and available for everybody to see. So thanks for that. Are there any petitions? Okay, so item 10.1 is the April finance report. The recommendation is that the council accepts the year-to-date April finance report, noting the progress against council's forecast. Sorry, I'm just going to move things around a bit here. Do I have someone to move that? April finance report. Do I have a mover?
Well, in the absence of the Finance Committee doing it, I'm happy to move it.
Thank you, Councillor Goldsworthy. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Shepherd. Okay, do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Goldsworthy?
Well, the monthly finance reports for the council, and at this stage they show that we're relatively on track for our capital works in comparison to last year, but chances of us completing 100% are unlikely. We've received some favourable grants, and yeah, we'll continue on in these uncertain times.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Shepherd, do you want to add anything? Okay, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Okay, carried. Thank you. Item 10.2 is the draft budget for 2020-2021. Yes, CEO.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I can't lean over and whisper to you. Just a reminder, we've got new local law prevailing now where we need to record all of the votes for and against. So just a reminder that when we call for the votes, that we note that it's unanimous or not, and who abstained and who voted against. Just a reminder.
I think it was unanimous.
Yeah, I know that it was, but just
10.1. Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm happy to make that clear. Thanks for the reminder.
Well, item 10.2, I'm happy to move that.
Thank you. So you're moving the draft budget, just so people know what Councillor Goldsworthy is moving. He's moving that where council endorses the draft budget in accordance with the Local Government Act, authorises the CEO to give public notice of the preparation of the draft budget, invites any person wishing to make a submission in relation to the proposed budget to do so prior to the 26th of June at 5 p.m, schedules a special meeting of council on the 14th of July to hear any person wishing to be heard in support of their submission, and considers a recommendation to adopt the budget at the July ordinary meeting of council. So 28th of July, sorry, 2020. Councillor Goldsworthy has moved that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Murdoch. Councillor Goldsworthy, would you like to speak to that?
Yep.
Just before you go on, Madam Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment to that recommendation.
So what's the amendment that you propose, Councillor?
The amendment is that the recommendation from points 1 to 4 stays in, the paragraph 5 is out, and the paragraph 6 is now included, and that is the council requests the CEO to prepare a service review of the Indigo Shire Tourism Department, including A, visitor services, B, the tourism department, C, the Burke Museum and Historic Precinct, and to bring this to council before presentation of the final budget report.
Yeah, no, I don't accept that amendment. I'd like to go with the motion.
I'd like to ask for a seconder, Madam Mayor.
No, sorry, Councillor. I need to ask the mover first if he approves of the amendment.
No, I do not.
And you don't. So, okay, so we're going back to the original recommendation.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I've moved an amendment that I can at any time, and I would like you to call for a seconder to that amendment.
Just hang on, Councillor. I just need to check. My understanding is, I may be wrong, but let me just check with local law. My understanding is that if you move an amendment to an existing motion, that the mover of that motion has to agree to the amendment.
So you have a motion on the table that has a mover and a seconder, and that's got to be considered before any amendment.
Madam Mayor, an amendment can be made at any time. But I realise that Councillor Goldsworthy is happy to give you advice. But,
I'm Councillor,
I'm
checking the local law.
Thank you.
I'm not taking advice from anyone other than perhaps CEO or Phil, Acting Director on Governance. But I'm sorry, you'll just have to give me a minute to read through this. I'm looking for an amendment. That's an adjournment. Sorry. Are any of the executive willing to offer some advice on this?
Just looking it up now, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, me
Sorry.
too. Amending a motion, page 27. For those of you that have in front of you, it's page 27, if you wish to see what I'm reading. Okay, amending a motion. This is item 60. I'll just read it out so everyone can hear what I'm reading. An amendment must retain the intent of the motion and may only add, remove or alter aspects that maintain the original intent of the motion. No amendment shall be moved that is contrary in substance to the original motion. The mover and seconder of a motion cannot move or second an amendment to it. If an amendment is moved and seconded and that amendment is accepted by both the mover and seconder of the original motion, then the motion is amended without the need for a seconder or a vote of the amendment. So that sounds like you can get a seconder for your amendment, but both the mover and seconder of the original motion then have to agree to that.
No, that's not the case.
I'm just
What it is no, that's not the case. You don't have to debate it if the mover and the seconder of the original motion agree to it. If you if they don't agree to it, then you've got to get a mover and a second for the amendment, then the amendment's debated. You can't. If the mover and a seconder of a separate amendment, you don't need clarification from the original mover of the motion or the seconder.
Well, you've got a motion on the table that needs to be dealt with. And I'd also say that the dot point 6 that the councillor wants to add is against the intent of the original motion.
If that motion is moved and passed, then you can't amend it. You have to amend it beforehand. And then if the amendment gets through, then whoever moves it owns that motion.
Okay, councillor, can you tell me where you're getting that from? Because that's not what I'm reading. Sorry, it's different to what I'm reading. So I'm just trying to get it right. Obviously I've got to abide by the laws. So, CEO, do you have any advice on this for me?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I'm actually trying to read it while I'm listening to the debate at the same time. Probably just
Can I just ask you, look,
Greg's usually knows the stuff off the top of his head, and I just need quiet 5 minutes to go offline to read it. If you want to just pause for a moment, you and I go offline, Madam Mayor, we can.
Yeah, I think we'll do that. Can we pause, please, Administrator, just so I can talk with the CEO and get it clear? I'm trying to read.
Do you want a motion to suspend standing orders so you can do that?
I don't think I need to do that. I think we can we're allowed to discuss something. Normally we just do it next to each other, but we can't.
Yeah,
so
just recall that the law in relation to us having Zoom meetings, if councillor isn't present, that's all.
Sorry, so that oh no, we're still present. We're just we're just
talking.
We're in a side room.
All right.
Okay, I'm getting messages from people and I'm getting people telling me I need to do this properly and make sure I've got it right, just so that I can't, I need to get it right. So Administrator, can you please put the CEO and I into a room to discuss, and we'll be as quick as we can. Okay, sorry. Can everyone see and hear me? All right, thank you. Sorry, thank you for your patience. Councillor Gaffney, I can't see. Oh, there you are. Councillor Gaffney, I've just been advised by the CEO that number A, the amendment must retain the intent of the motion and can't, and anything added to remove or alter aspects that change the original intent of the motion are outside the rules for the amendment. And if you take out number 5, that is actually the whole point of the motion, because it's actually about adopting the budget at the July ordinary meeting. So taking that out is actually substantially changing the entire motion, because that's all about getting the budget back to council to pass. And then item 6, which is about a tourism review, also is outside the intent of that motion. So I don't think that amendment's going to stand up on this motion. However, you could put it as an alternate motion. So I'm afraid that's how I'm going to have to rule it, because it's so clear that that intention to leave out 5 means that the entire motion doesn't stand up, because there's no time to bring a budget back to council, which is the entire purpose. Yes.
You're on mute, Bernie.
I'm muted, Bernie. Sorry. Councillor, sorry.
The budget doesn't have to be passed until September, and this just gives the CEO extra time. I was considering giving him a certain time limit, but because the budget doesn't have to be approved until September, I was giving him that extra time. This endorses the budget, which is the main theme of the recommendation. So I agree with that. Could you ask Councillor Goldsworthy not to speak over me?
I have asked him to speak.
Thank you. So it endorses the attached budget. It doesn't move away from that. It just changes the date and asks for a review. But I won't move a motion of dissent, although I think I could with your ruling. But I'll just foreshadow that I'll move an alternative motion if this motion fails.
Okay. Councillor Goldsworthy, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, just that you'd made your ruling and that he was speaking to the motion.
That's okay. Look, I want to explain the ruling. I think I understand what you're saying, Councillor Gaffney. However, I think I have to stand by there. It's such a clear direction that there's nothing in this motion about a review of tourism, and nor is the budget dependent on that. So just because of that, it's not that I don't think that's necessarily a good idea. I don't think it fits within this particular motion. So I'm going to have to stick with how I interpret the reading of 60A, amending a motion, and that means we go back to the original motion that was moved by Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded by Councillor Murdoch. Councillor Goldsworthy, do you wish to speak to that motion?
I don't think it was seconded by Councillor Murdoch, Madam Mayor.
Oh, yes, it was, wasn't it, Councillor?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, well,
Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Gaffney, it was.
Okay.
Councillor Goldsworthy.
Yep. So for the last 6 months, we've between the staff and councillors, we've been working on this budget. It's quite a lengthy document and outlines the council position for the next year, has a number of updates in it. There's some important projects that we're looking to carry through, like the rail trail from Beechworth to Osborne's Flat, the Epic mountain bike track, as well as our normal bridge renewal works and resheeting. There's the Waggunya to Mutamere Trail, a library outreach program. We're in uncertain times. We've certainly adapted this budget over recent months to consider the COVID-19 effects, and it may well be a continuing working project over a number of months. But it is worth adopting the budget, or putting the budget out now for consideration, so that we can get some feedback from people, and it may well be that in the coming months it does need to change. But certainly the pool of work that's being done currently is a good document, and I'll be interested to get public feedback in relation to it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Murdoch, do you wish to speak as a seconder?
Yeah, no, I think that Councillor
Goldsworthy?
Goldsworthy has got, I am quite interested in the number 6 as a service review of the tourism, whether we can add it into this or to make it a separate.
Okay,
item.
so just to be clear, councillor, you're moving, it doesn't include number 6 because
I would like it to include number 6. Yeah, but
you want,
it's
oh, okay, hang on.
what I moved, so I can't change that.
No, it hadn't been put yet.
Oh.
Did you think you were moving that? No, that's why we went and had the discussion and
No. I knew I was that, but number 6 has been added and I haven't.
It hasn't been added.
It hasn't.
No.
No, that's what I mean. So, yeah.
Okay, so just to be clear, are you happy to second pretty much as it stands, 1 to 5? There's no number 6 because it substantively changed the, it wasn't in keeping with the actual intent of that, which was about the draft budget. So do you wish to second that or would you prefer not to?
I prefer not to because I would like to have that other in.
Yep. Okay. And Councillor Gaffney has foreshadowed an alternate motion. And of course, that can still proceed under a different motion. It's just that it couldn't be part of this one. Okay. Do I have a seconder then to the draft budget one? Yeah, Councillor Shepherd. Thank you. So Councillor Goldsworthy has moved and spoken to that. Would you like to speak to it as a seconder, Councillor Shepherd?
Just that we have had quite a long time for us to be looking at this budget. We've had quite a discussion with the finance department most weeks now for the past 3 or 4 months. We've had the opportunity to discuss this budget. We're aware that COVID-19 is putting a dent and we've had to adjust, and you'll be able to see that when you look at the budget. It's a difficult space for us to be in, but we're willing to go for this moderate budget and look at, you know, what's going to eventuate, as no one knows at the moment. I do commend again our finance department and Phil Garoni, who's sitting here with us. I really appreciate the different services budget being available for us to go through with a fine-tooth comb, and for the community to see exactly what each section of our council spend is. So, yeah, I'm happy to second this motion.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the budget? Any other? Yeah, Councillor Trenery.
I've got a few questions in regard to the mover or the seconder. We just heard that we've gone through every part of the budget and every part of our spending and expenditure. I'd just like to know how much it's been reduced.
Do you want to ask, you're asking the mover, or do you want to ask Phil Garoni?
Mover or seconder. We just heard that we've been through the whole lot, and I know as chair of the finance committee, we asked a lot of questions in regards to this and didn't get a lot of responses. So I'm just asking, it's just been put that we've spent 3 months going through this budget, that we've examined our expenses and our cost structure, and I just want to know what's been reduced or where we're at.
Yeah, I might start off by answering that, and then I'll defer to.
And then I'll go to Councillor Shepherd. Yep. So Councillor Goldsworthy, you go first, then Councillor Shepherd, and then perhaps if Councillor Trenery wants more information, maybe Phil Garoni can add something.
Yeah, so I sat through the finance committee meeting last Friday where they considered this budget, and this question wasn't raised, nor was the proposed amendment to it. Matter of fact, it was not much of a discussion at all, and so it intrigues me that we should be surprised by these sort of things at the last minute. But what I will say in relation to the reduction of expenditure, there was across the board where possible, at least a few scenarios that went out for council to consider, and the one that I'm aware of, there was a 10% reduction in some of the expenses. In other areas it was higher, but certainly for the minutiae detail, then I'd be looking for Phil Garoni to fill that in.
Councillor Shepherd, did you want to add something to that as a seconder?
I can't find where I highlighted it. It's one of those meetings, I think, but I think it was 500,000 that we had reduced was going to be the net outcome. But I'm happy to let Phil answer that. The other thing is, though, Councillor Trenery hasn't attended many of these briefing meetings. I know he's busy, he's working, so he may have missed a lot of the discussion.
Okay, so Phil Garoni, in your role both as acting director and as chief financial advisor, would you like to add anything to those answers to Councillor Trenery?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So firstly, to Councillor Shepherd's request on how much we've dropped the income by, it's dropped by just over $500,000 in scenario one that we took to council, which also then reduced a reduction in our expenditure by just over $615,000. Overall, the expenditure from forecast to budget has gone only a difference of about $259,000, which is less than 1% is what the expenditure has gone up by.
Okay, thank you. And I think CEO, you wanted to add something, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor, to see if you've got any follow-up questions.
Phil's covered it, Madam Mayor. We did look at the various scenarios just in regards to COVID-19, what it might turn out to be. The one we use announcements of easing of the restrictions are probably more favourable than we anticipated. So, you know, we've made certain assumptions, for example, about Bulla Gas and a reduced ski season, and it looks like ski season will open almost the usual time, but across the state, every council's wrestled with this, what to assume for COVID-19, how much revenue might we lose, and what offsets in costs can we have without standing staff down necessarily.
Madam Mayor,
we've done that here. And
Madam Mayor, my question was about specific things. My question was about specific things where we've saved. We've got a couple totals. My question, and this has been asked by ratepayers and businesses in the community, some businesses have dropped 50 to 60% of their income. And so they want to know what we're doing to adjust how we've saved money so we're not putting an extra burden on the community. And I was asking for some specific things that we've saved.
So are you happy?
Areas, and I haven't heard one yet.
Are you happy to direct that to Phil Garoni?
Anyone who can give me an answer, I'll be absolutely
so, Madam Mayor, we've identified $600,000 in savings for the first wave. That's included in this budget. So that's in casual staff, full-time staff. There's about $350,000 in staff there, not in stand downs, but we often have vacancies. So it's about not replacing vacancies and things like that. Gas purchases, accommodation, travel, conferences, food catering, and a range of things like that. So we've been, so we've identified those savings and taken those out of the budget. So it's $600,000 worth.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was exactly what I was after.
Okay,
the 350,000, just with the CO, with the 350,000 reduction, is that 350,000 reduction on budget last year?
Yes, it is. Yeah, so this year's budget would be similar to last year's budget. So it's a reduction on the budget, and the budgets are similar to the last year. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. And just to answer Councillor Goldsworthy's question, we have more than one meeting every couple of months with the Finance Committee. We've spoken about the budget probably more than half a dozen times and asked these questions and gone through it ad nauseum. And got two other members of the Finance Committee here that could confirm that. The one other question I've got, Madam Mayor, is just clarification, so we don't have another break. Is if Councillor Gaffney moves a motion after this recommendation is moved to a motion and accepted, can he still move a motion on 10.2 to add to the current motion, or does this motion need to be defeated before Councillor Gaffney can move his motion?
Yeah, you'd have to, that would be an alternate motion if this one didn't get up. And then Councillor Gaffney, if it didn't get up, he could put an alternate motion.
If it
But
did get up,
if it did get up, then it gets up as it is. So it's not part of that motion.
so he
So
can't
if
add a motion thereafter.
Not if it substantially changes the basis of the motion. And the motion, as I read it, is that we put out a draft budget, people can make submissions, and then we bring it to a July meeting. So nothing in the proposal Councillor Gaffney put forward had anything to do with that. It was about a service review, which you might want to tie into the budget, fair enough, but that's actually not what this motion's about. So in the way I'm
So what I'm
reading,
asking,
yeah, so my answer
so
is,
if this, yep,
sorry, my answer if I've got your question correct, is
Yep.
that this now will be voted on. If it doesn't pass, Councillor Gaffney can raise another motion. But this motion.
but if it does pass, it cannot.
Well, then because then it's passed as is. That's it. And then you can put
Yep.
a new motion.
Okay,
Yeah, separately. Yeah. Okay.
you can put a new motion separately.
Well, councillors can put motions, yeah, for sure, but not as an amendment to something that exists if it doesn't add in, if it's not consistent with that.
Okay, thank you.
So getting back to 10.2, we've got a mover, we've had a seconder, Councillor Shepherd. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion?
Trevor wants to say something, so does Mark.
Sorry, I'm looking at councillors to see if they want to say, yes, CEO first.
So my understanding would be if the amendment is voted on and has passed, then that item's been dealt with. We move on to the next item.
Sorry,
would be my understanding.
You just said if the amendment has been
Sorry,
voted.
if the motion,
Yes.
the motion that's put is resolved in the
Then
affirmative, then that item's been dealt with and we move to the next item.
That's right. Yep. And Director Mark Florence, you wanted to add some advice?
No, Madam Mayor, I was just trying to draw your attention to the fact that the CEO was looking.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, guys. They're little squares. I'm finding it hard to keep track of everybody all the time. So, yeah, it's good to let me know if I miss someone. Thank you. All right. Anyone else wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Gaffney.
So did I hear the CEO say that he'd cut costs by 350,000? Was that?
Sorry?
Did the CEO say that he had cut costs by 350,000?
I think it was 600,000.
615,000 is what's been taken out of the budget under our first level of COVID-19 adjustments.
So does that
350 odd of that was in salaries.
Does that take into account that the reduction in the surplus from Buller Gas is 170,000?
Part of that 600,000 was the cost of Buller Gas purchases. So we're presuming lower sales of gas for Buller Gas, but which also comes with a lower cost of gas.
No, but it says in the budget papers that the surplus will be reduced by 170,000. I'm just asking whether that's been taken into account.
The Buller Gas surplus has been taken into account in those reductions, yes.
So is that part of the 600,000 savings?
$600,000 that have been 616,000 that have been reduced. Part of the cost of that, most of that is in salaries, occasional and permanent salaries. Also in there is the cost of gas purchases. There's an assumption of lost revenue of about $500,000. There's an assumption of reduced expenses about $600,000. So on the lost revenue of $500,000, we're presuming we're going to lose Buller Gas sales of about 370 of the 500. To offset that, we're lowering our expenses. Now, some of those expense reductions will be the cost of gas, because if we sell less gas, we actually buy less gas. So that's about 230 of the 616.
I realise that, but I was only interested in the surplus to council. It's been reduced by 170,000. Yeah,
so overall, we're if you net out the revenue and expense, there's a loss of surplus on bullet gas of about $130,000, which we're trying to make up, as well as loss of other revenue as well, which we're also trying to make up. So that's being saved mainly through salaries to make up the difference.
Was that taking into account that there may not be a snow season, which we know that there is now going to be?
It was assuming a badly affected snow season. Yes, it was. Now it does look like there's an easing of the snow season, but there's also lots of other ups and downs that may well, other costs that may well occur. So yeah, I don't see a need to adjust these figures just yet for that recent announcement, but I think the first quarter review will be really telling then to see how that season really turned out. We'll have much better figures.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. Okay. Anyone else wish to speak to this motion? Okay, I'm going to, sorry?
If I could sum
Yeah,
up.
would you like to sum up? Yes.
Yep. So it's a $34 million budget. We've got $10.7 million of the capital works. We've all had input into this budget over the last 6 months. It's an important document the council adopts, one of the most important, because we know without the money, a lot of things don't happen. It's folly to consider putting this budget off for a service review. I'll enter somewhat into that debate and discuss that the CEO is already undertaking a number of service reviews within the council, and it's not necessary to continue with an additional one. If due consideration wants to be given to that, then a notice of motion would be the most appropriate place to do that. So the budget should go out, should receive public comment. If there's justification in relation to the tourism budget, then we'll look at that separately. The hearings in June, it should come back to the meeting in July, and council should consider all potential amendments or the budget as it stands back then. So for that reason, I say we should pass this motion now.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. Against? Councillor Murdoch, is your hand up?
Yeah.
Sorry. So all those in favour, I've just got to call out the names. So Councillor Shepherd, Councillor Goldsworthy, Councillor Price, Councillor O'Connor. Against? Councillor Gaffney, Councillor Trenery, Councillor Murdoch, I'm not clear which way you're voting. No, against?
Mm-hmm.
Against. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Barb, I couldn't see your hand. It was not in front of the camera. Thank you. All right, so passed. Item 10.3, Assembly of Council Records. Recommendation is that Council accepts the attached Assembly of Council Records. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Shepherd, seconded Councillor Murdoch. Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Shepherd? Okay, no, thank you. Councillor Murdoch. Oh, sorry, I said Murdoch. Councillor Goldsworthy. It's in the wrong place. No, okay. Anyone wish to speak to this motion? Put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.1 is the draft Carlisle Cemetery Strategic Plan. The recommendation is that Council endorses the draft Carlisle Cemetery Strategic Plan 2020 to 2024 and places it on public exhibition for 30 days. Do I have someone to move that?
Mayor, I just wonder, given that the following items out for exhibition for 60 days, whether it's worth considering a 60-day consideration of the Carlisle Strategic Plan.
All right, so are you putting up an amendment to move it to 60 days?
Yep, I'm happy to do that.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Price. Okay, so back to the motion. Thank you, Councillor Goldsworthy.
Yep. Look, this is actually a really good news thing. It's involved the community in developing this strategic plan. Long term, it involves the community taking back the Carlisle Cemetery. It's an important local asset. It really should be managed locally for the betterment of the local community, like many of our other cemeteries are in the Indigo Shire. So for that reason, I think it's really good that we've got a plan. We support the cemetery, and ultimately hopefully it'll return to the strategic overview of those that care most about it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Price, would you like to speak as a seconder?
Yeah, I'd agree with everything that Councillor Goldsworthy said. It is a really important community asset for the Rutherglen Waganya community. It's got quite a bit of the history within it of the first people that owned the plots of land in Rutherglen and things like that. So there's a lot of family history within that cemetery. So I'm really pleased to see that it's got this strategic plan in place and that a lot of the right people have been involved. I suppose now we're looking for further engagement, and maybe some of those families that place such high value on it can now have some involvement and some input into if they think the strategic plan is on the track.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to this motion? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? Carried unanimously. And yes, thank you to everyone that's put a huge amount of work and effort into that, staff and community people. Okay, so 11.2 is the draft local food policy. The recommendation is that council endorses the draft local food policy and invites community comment for a period of 60 days. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Goldsworthy, do I have a seconder? Councillor Shepherd. Okay, Councillor Goldsworthy.
Once again, this is a really important strategy. We've seen over recent months in relation to the COVID-19, the importance of food. To some, it seemed to be toilet paper, but predominantly food. And we know that recently they've been reporting that you'll be hard pressed to get Australian rice by December. You'll be importing it all, given the last couple of years of drought and the impact it's had on rice growing areas. We have a really important food industry locally, whether it's in producing the raw goods or the manufacture of it. I don't think that there's a more important industry in the Indigo Shire. We all need to eat. So it's vitally important that we get this off the ground and start looking at where our food comes from and securing it for future use. And it has impacts across all aspects of council operations, including planning and how we look after our farmers in the future.
Okay, Councillor Shepherd, did you want to speak to the motion?
Sorry, I've got two mics that I'm handling here. Yeah, look, I think I'd like to firstly thank the Northeast Local Food Strategy Group who started this and have written the Northeast strategy. And one of their actions was that councils write a local policy, local food policy. So from that instigation, and in our involvement with them, we have written our own. And Peter Kenyon is on that group, and he's also been on the working group. So I'd like to thank him for pushing this from both levels. And also the other people in the working group were Anna McKinlay from Beechworth Health, Sue Brunskill from Wurrigi, who does the Wurrigi markets, Jane Roots, who's our IEAC deputy chair and has been involved as chair for a long time, and of course Guy Wilkinson, our economic development officer, and Carleen Lamina. So it's had a solid group of people with a wide knowledge about local food policy. I think there's a lot more to be done there. If you go down the bottom of this, you can see the actions that council has said that they will do. A lot of it is advocacy, but I agree with Councillor Goldsworthy. There's also something to be said about the planning, which isn't necessarily part of this policy, but it's a discussion to be had. But congratulations to Carleen and to that group for this beginning. And I hope that people have an opportunity to give us some feedback on this.
Yeah, just to reiterate that it's been quite a good process up to this point. It's been good to see our Indigo Shire strategy group work with that regional group, and I think that it means that we get a much better outcome. And also bringing it to the Environment Committee.
If you're interested in these issues, have a look at them and let us know your thoughts, and they'll come back for decision in 60 days. Okay, so item 12.1 is the April Capital Works Report. The recommendation is that Council notes the Capital Works Report and year-to-date progress of the Capital Works program, notes that 2 new grants announced for projects to be delivered in 2020-21, the Rutherglen Kindergarten, $25,898, the Yakandanda Memorial Gardens, $30,000, which is about fixing the fence and the gates there, and approves the reallocation of $85,000 from Cemetery Road to the Barnard Street project. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Goldsworthy. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Murdoch. Okay, Councillor Goldsworthy.
Yeah, look, I'm moving a few things. It seems a few people are a bit gun shy here. But anyway, look, it is really important to have a focus on our capital works program, and this report is seems to be getting better every time it's presented to council in the newer format. It's great that we got those new grants to fix the Rutherglen Kindergarten and the Memorial Gardens gate. And as for the $85,000 going from the Cemetery Road to the Barnard Street, I thought it was a really good outcome that I think it was North Road has been sealed. And when you go around the cemetery there, it is obvious that that's the closest access to the newer cemetery area. So it's really good for the Chiltern community that that's occurred, and equally for the Beechworth community to try and get that work done. It's a shame it's going to cost a fair bit more than what was initially anticipated, but it'll be a good use of funds. Yeah, as I said earlier when we were discussing the financial report, whilst it may not get 100% completed by the end of the year, it's certainly on a better track than what we were at the same time last year. So congratulations to the Director of Infrastructure and his team for the achievements that they've made.
All right, anyone else wish to speak? Or Councillor Murdoch, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I was just thinking of the Rutherglen Kinder. It's great that they've got that sort of money to improve their premises, because I know it's probably not as bad as it was when I first got on council, but I was absolutely appalled the first time I saw those that kindergarten, and I believe it has had some betterment since, but a little bit more won't hurt. The Yakandanda Memorial Gardens, that's a lovely spot. And anything we can do to keep it looking good, I think is a good thing.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shepherd, and then Councillor Trenery.
I just wanted to congratulate the staff. I know the Yakandanda Kindergarten were concerned about the limited funding that they had when they are growing, and they didn't want to do something that was not going to work for the future. And the staff have been working with them on negotiating how that could work. And the fact that there's been savings from the Chiltern preschool that can be put towards it, I think it's a great outcome. And I just think it's fantastic that communication is able to happen, and they're able to do collaboration, and you know, of course it's a win-win when they're talking and collaborating. So great job.
Councillor, you were referring to the Rutherglen Kindergarten?
No, sorry, the Yakandanda Kindergarten.
Oh, okay. So this motion's about the Rutherglen Kindergarten, but that's okay. There's also great work with Yakandanda as well.
The motion is about the Rutherglen Kindergarten, but it just in the capital works, there's some project highlights, and that's one of them.
Great. Oh, thank you. Okay, that clarifies it. Thank you. Councillor Trenery.
Just in part of those highlights as well, the Yakandanda Memorial Gardens. I know this is a project that the local RSL has been working on for a considerable amount of time. So it's fantastic that Indigo Shire has got together with the RSL and managed to get that project up. It's a very important project for the veterans. So well done to all.
Absolutely. All right. Okay, so Anyone else wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Goldsworthy, do you wish to add anything, summing it up? All right, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Hands everywhere, carried. Can't see you, Councillor Gaffney. Councillor Gaffney, are you in favour? Good, thank you. Unanimous, thank you. 13.1 Advocacy Plan Update. So the recommendation is that Council notes the advocacy plan. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Price. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Shepherd, thank you. Councillor Price.
I just think it's really timely that we're noting this now, given the success of some of our advocacy in recent weeks. It highlights the importance of having a really well put together list, so that in times when the economy needs a boost, or when the federal and state government come to us asking what projects we have ready, we're able to provide a really solid base to go from. And we're able to say to state and federal government, we've consulted with our community on these projects, and that's why we can really stand behind them and put them forward to you. And congratulations to the Mayor and CEO in particular in the success that we've had in recent weeks with our advocacy.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Shepherd. Do you wish to speak? Yeah.
Yes, I do. Sorry.
Okay.
I'd also like to thank our communications person, Melinda Grigg, who's has worked closely with all of us on making sure that this advocacy plan is very well. I must say, when I first got on council, it was a very short document. It is now a large document with a lot of discussion and action around it. I think a lot of it is that she has been, and her previous communications officer have been pushing to fill that out. And as Councillor Price has just said, it's certainly achieved results, and the results are here that the Ned Kelly Trials Experience Project, that funding, the grant for to support various infrastructure improvements across Chiltern, Yak, Beechworth, what else? The swimming pool feasibility study. So there's the bush recovery advocacy. So there's lots of funding, and I'm sure the state and federal staff are very aware of our needs and concerns because of it. So thank you.
Councillor Goldsworthy.
Yeah, I'd like to support the previous comments. This has been a terrific document. It's something that the community can comment on and give us feedback on, and we've certainly taken those comments and put them into our advocacy plan. It's been very successful over the term of this council, and what isn't here is some of those successes that have come and gone, and things like the rail trail. Over the term of this council, I think we can be very proud of the things that are on there, the things we're trying to achieve, and how they marry in with the council plan. So this current one, whilst we've only got a few months left, it's still a very important document and should be supported.
Yeah. Anyone else wish to speak to it? To the motion? Can I just add that in the role as an advocate, and I'm sure Councillor Gaffney, you felt this when you were mayor in last year too, was that having this document, being able to go and say, this is from our community, this is backed up, this has got support, rather than just thought bubbles about what do you want. It's really helpful, and I think we've done, when you look at the grants that are coming out at the moment, I think Indigo Shire is doing really, really well, because we've got such a solid advocacy position on things, and it's not just a one-off. They hear these things over and over again from all of us in different ways. So it has been really great, and I want to thank everyone for their work, and particularly the community that has come up with these. Really, all of this has come from community requests to us. So yeah, it's been great. So thank you. Councillor Gaffney, do you want to add anything?
You're on mute.
You're muted.
That during this term of council, we've got over $5 million from the state government for the Beechworth to Yakandanda Rail Trail. We've got $1 million from the federal government for the Beechworth to Yakandanda Epic Mountain Bike Trail. we've just received 2.5 million for the Chiltern Community Hub. And we've just received $500,000 for the Ned Kelly Alive in Beechworth. When these were announced last week, I got several phone calls from people at Rutherglen to say that during the entire term of this council, they haven't received a substantial grant. Would you be able to verify that, CEO? They just feel left out, that they haven't received any.
Can I just jump in there just to say, Councillor Gaffney, that it's important for the people of Rutherglen to know that in all of this advocacy, we have been asking for grants for the tracks and trails there to link up the wineries and various other things. I've raised the idea of the silo projects. Unfortunately, you know, you can't pick what they're going to fund. But
no, I realise that.
Just to reassure the people of Rutherglen, we are trying really hard to get funding for them, and we'll continue to do so. But perhaps, CEO, you could answer the question from Councillor Gaffney.
Madam, I probably prefer to take on notice because I can't rattle off all the grants over the last few years. And if you go back, I'm a half I want to go back and also include revitalisation of about $2 million in there somewhere. So, you know,
the revitalisation goes back to 2014, 2015, CEO. I just said for the term of this council, the term of this council, the last 4 years.
Yeah, so some of that predates me, so I'm not sure which grants fell in which periods.
I'm just saying for the term of this council, they feel probably neglected, and I can't think of a substantial grant that they have received.
Yeah, I haven't been here for the whole term of this council, so I need to come back with some numbers. I can't think off the top of my head.
Okay, so you're taking that on notice, CEO.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah.
And I think Councillor Gaffney, you've raised a good point. And just again, to reassure the Rutherglen people, we are advocating to get funding for them, and we'll continue to do so and hope that we get a result. Yeah. So I'm now going to put, anyone else wish to speak to the motion? I think everyone pretty much has had a go. Sorry, yeah, Councillor, do you want to sum up?
I hear Councillor Gaffney's comments about Rutherglen. Obviously, we've seen a lot of the projects sort of underway, even though the funding was given in the previous council term. But I think that's quite often how it goes, that it seems quite skewed because a lot of the priorities fall out of the one placemaking document at the time, and that has been Chiltern at this stage. And that's why we're really looking forward to doing Rutherglen placemaking, so that perhaps the priorities could be skewed towards Rutherglen for a while as well. And just back to the document, to agree with what Councillor Shepherd said, thanks to the communications manager, because I'm really pleased that this is such a wide-ranging document. It's not just focused on infrastructure projects. It really caters to whatever our community needs advocacy on, and I think that's appropriate.
Thanks, Councillor. All right, so I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? No one against? Unanimous. Thanks, councillors. So 13.2 is review of the council plan. The recommendation is that council endorses the council plan 2017 to 2021 under the Local Government Act. There are amendments there, which I won't read out. They're numbered. And there goes my dog. I authorise the CEO to give public notice. We authorise the CEO to give public notice of the preparation of the review council plan. Invite any person wishing to make a submission in relation to this to do so prior to 26th of June at 5 p.m. Schedules any person wishing to be heard in support of their submission to be heard at the council special meeting on July 14th, and considers a recommendation to adopt the reviewed council plan at the July ordinary meeting of 28th July 2020. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Goldsworthy. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Murdoch. Thanks, councillors. Councillor Goldsworthy.
Oh, I seem to maintain my position on this. If it's not in the council plan, it doesn't usually happen. And so if it's on the plan, we don't do a budget. It doesn't go to the advocacy plan usually, and quite often it doesn't get done for the majority of projects. Look, this has once again been a document that we've worked from over the last 3.5 years. By the time this last review is adopted, there'll only be a couple of months to run for this current council. It's been a good document. There's no reason why we shouldn't adopt the recommendation as it stands with the minor amendments. We've certainly, there's been a lot of achievements along the way, and it's something that the council staff, council lawyers and the community should be proud of what we've done and achieved through this document.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Councillor Murdoch.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate what Councillor Goldsworthy said, and to remember that this is going out and people can make submissions to it so that they can add to things that they would feel they would want or need. And yes, I think it's well worth people reading and making comments on.
Thank you, Councillor. And anyone else wish to speak to this? Checking, can't see any hands up. All right, so do you want to add any further comment, Councillor Goldsworthy? Okay, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Councillor Murdoch, is your hand up?
Yeah, right in front of you.
No, it's not in front of the camera, so I can't see it. It's off camera. There it is. Thank you.
Yeah.
Carried unanimously. Thanks, Councillor. 13.3 Advisory Committee Minutes. The recommendation is that Council receive the attached unconfirmed Advisory Committee minutes and endorses the officer comments. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Price. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Goldsworthy. Councillor Price, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, just that obviously these meetings are being held in different ways at the moment as well. And although the minutes aren't included in this, the Access Committee recently had some advocacy success of their own, that they sometimes review the infrastructure projects that we have going across the Shire and made quite a reasonable suggestion with regard to the path at Apex Park. So really important that groups like theirs are still able to meet via Zoom, although strangely that can be less accessible than meeting face to face. So it works in all different ways. But yeah, pleased that they were able to meet to still continue to assist with infrastructure projects from an accessibility point of view.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Councillor Goldsworthy, do you wish to speak as a seconder? Anyone else wish to speak to this motion? Okay, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thanks, everyone. So 14 is notices of motion. There's been no notices of motion put up. 15 is the councillors' reports. I'll come to other councillors, to everyone, but my diary is there. Anyone got any questions on that? Of course, it's available to the public. As you can see, mostly things are now done via media and Zoom. There's very little community engagement face-to-face at the moment, but I can assure everyone that there's been lots of emails and phone calls and things happening as well. So any questions from anyone about that? Okay, any other reports people would like to put forward about things they have been attending? And I know, I think it's important for the community to know, because I keep hearing I do get comments that, you know, councillors haven't been working while this has happened. That's not the case. Councillors are busy, very busy actually, working and fitting in what they can using Zoom, using teleconferences and all kinds of things, emails. So there's been a lot of work going on, particularly around the budget. There's been a lot of workshops and time spent on that. So I just want to reassure the community that while you may not see us at events, that does not mean that we're not working. And I want to really put paid to that idea, because I've heard it a few times, and I can assure people that is not the case. So any other reports from councillors who are working? Well, yes, Councillor Shepherd.
We just had a Zoom Goulburn Broken Greenhouse Alliance meeting couple of days ago. That was a 4-hour event. And one of the great things about it was because it's right around the region, going down to Shepparton and across to Mansfield, it meant that we were able to all be in the Zoom meeting. I think there were 40 people or something. And lots of discussion around, I'll write something up and get it in, but it's around electric vehicles, around renewables, around what each of the councils are doing at the moment. So that's a very valuable meeting. And also met with the Murray Arts, and I'm the chair at the moment as I was the deputy chair. So I just did a briefing and a handover there. So just while there's someone on maternity leave. So they're the two things in the last week that I've attended.
Congratulations on your appointment, Councillor Shepherd, because the Murray Arts Board actually does really important work around arts and culture in our region. Okay, thank you for your updates. Anyone else would like to give an update on things they've been involved in?
Look, Jenny, I've got a couple this week, not last week, but just the Emergency Management Planning Committee and the Caravan Parks strategy. So I forwarded those details to the other councillors if anyone wants to drop into the Zoom meeting. I'm sure it'll be appreciated.
Great, and it'd be good to get an update for the public at the next council meeting on anything that came out of those. Sure. Thanks, Councillor. Okay, anything else? All right. So that's the councillor report. That's just for information. Then item 16.1 is the decisions register. Again, that's really just for information for people to be able to keep a track of the decisions we've made and where they're up to, and it's quite extensive. Item 17, general business. Do I have any general business? Councillor Gaffney.
At the finance meeting last Friday, the CEO told us that that he'd made a decision to buy an electric vehicle from the current budget, not the budget coming up, with funds that were over for that. And it was a pool car. It's to be a pool car. I would have thought that changing from diesel and petrol cars to an electric vehicle would be a policy decision, but he said it's an operational decision. It's just that there's a number of drawbacks in regard to the vehicle. The diesel equivalent was $23,930. The electric vehicle's $43,062. I don't believe we've got a charging station at the moment, but apparently the vehicle will take 6 to 10 hours to charge. It'll have a range of 200 to 250 kilometres, so it can't be driven to Canberra, it can't be driven to Melbourne. I'm just wondering, I know it's in relation to Councillor Goldsworthy's declaration notice of motion of a climate emergency. I'm just wondering if the purchase of this vehicle is going to have a huge impact on greenhouse gas emissions. And is he still going ahead with that? It was to be.
Who are you asking, Councillor, just to be clear?
The CEO. Well, right. He raised it during finance, which I was surprised that he was going to buy it from last year's budget and not the current budget. And there's no money in the current budget going forward, I mean, the
2021.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no funds in that. And yet there's a number of vehicles to be purchased, including a mayoral vehicle. And I was just wondering whether that'll be an electric vehicle or a hybrid or a diesel or whatever. And it's all right to buy one of these vehicles with ratepayers' money, but I don't know of any councillors who drive an electric vehicle.
Okay,
I was just wondering
the CEO
what the advantages are.
CEO, and then Councillor Goldsworthy, you've got a question, I see. Okay, so CEO, do you want to respond to Councillor Gaffney asking about the cost? Can I ask you a question, Councillor Gaffney, before you reply, CEO? You talked about the difference in cost of purchasing the vehicle, but when I looked at the figures, if you leave out the fuel costs for the diesel, compared to the fuel costs for the EV over, I think it was 3 years, they're almost identical. Is that correct?
I'm just talking about the purchase price, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, but I mean, we look at the overall cost when we're looking at.
Yeah,
vehicles.
well, things change. In 10 years, it might become a very good buy and we might save money, but things change over 10 years. But the initial cost is what I said. The diesel car is 23,930 and the EV is 43,000. I'm not saying it's a bad decision to make, but I thought that it would have come to council.
Okay, so CEO, do you want to respond to that?
Yep, certainly with any decision like this, we do a business case, Madam Mayor, and the business case takes into account all factors, not just one factor, purchase price being just one factor. And I don't have the report in front of me. I've got quite a comprehensive report. Just to clarify, I haven't made a decision on it yet. It was a report that's come to me for a decision and I haven't signed off on that yet. So it's a little bit internal, but the figures that I've got from the staff make various assumptions, but they talk about the life cycle cost of the car. So when you look at your vehicles, you got to look at the purchase price, also you got to look at the potential resale price, depreciation in between, the ongoing costs, maintenance costs and running costs. So it's a whole of life cost. We did 2 scenarios, a 5-year scenario and an 8-year scenario. And under both scenarios, particularly the 8-year scenario, the costs are very, very, very similar. Obviously, electric vehicle doesn't use petrol, and there's lower operating costs as we go. So the two of them are line ball. There is the need for a charging station, and the charging station can be purchased for under $2,000, which will charge the vehicle. No, the car we probably wouldn't use it to go to Canberra, but then we don't go to Canberra much in the car. Most of our trips are around local trips each day, and the range of the cars are ample to do a number of multiple trips during the day and come back at the end of the day and put the car on the charger. And there you are, the next day it's all charged again. So you know, it's a fairly operational matter as I see it. You know, whether we buy diesel, whether we buy petrol, whether we buy electric car, we look at the car if it's fit for purpose, fit to do the job that we require of it. And I need to have a look at the assessment of it. I mean, my first look at it is that it'll do the job for what we need it to do. Economically, it's about the same in the longer term as a diesel vehicle, but then we also have the added benefits then of the environmental benefits and the saving in greenhouse gas emissions and things like that. This council has declared a climate emergency, and there are items in the council plan that talk to emission savings and things like that. So it fits in with, I think, fits in with strategic intent of this council. The item itself is budgeted in the 1920 budget. We did indicate in the 1920 budget that it was potentially going to be an electric vehicle. Money was set aside. So spending is within the budget. It's line ball, aligns up cost-wise with an alternate petrol diesel vehicle. And it fits in strategically with the direction of the climate emergency. So I think it's a pretty straightforward decision. So.
Do we intend to buy one during the 2020-21 budget? Are there funds set aside for that? I couldn't find it.
No, there's not one proposed for 2021. There's proposed one for 1920. So should I give it the go ahead, then we'll order one. Whether that arrives by June 30, I'm not sure yet. That might carry over to next year, but the funding for this car in its entirety is all funded. It's within the budget, and it's in the 1920 budget. We haven't proposed another vehicle. We haven't proposed another one in 2021.
The budget you're talking about, the 2019-2020, it doesn't talk about purchasing. It talks about the potential for purchasing. That's the word used. And I was sure that you said at the finance meeting. In fact, if I could just ask the chair, did the CEO say at that meeting that he was going to purchase it and probably before the 30th of June?
My recollection is that, yes, he was going to purchase it. It's stacked up in his mind. Obviously, it's not an economic decision. He was making a decision based on, I think, his words were leadership. And I think that's, I'm not trying to talk about a private meeting. And I think he's talked about the same things he's just talking about now, declaring a climate emergency. So even though You know, the original figures that came through were obviously completely wrong, and we adjusted those, and the depreciation is not taken into it. It's not so much an economic decision, it's in the CEO's words, leadership decision, and I was under the impression he was going to purchase it.
So the economics were ambivalent, so it was indifferent whether we bought a diesel or electric car. So it wasn't a decision based on environmental factors. What I was saying was that the costs of the two were almost identical. So the electric vehicle had the added benefits of having environmental outcomes as well.
Okay, so
What was the depreciation on that?
So I don't recall that figure. I don't know if you got that hand.
Take that on notice.
We take it on notice, yeah.
Councillor Goldsworthy and then Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Goldsworthy.
Yeah, so a couple of points on what's been raised by Councillor Gaffney. First of all, whilst I may have initiated the notice of motion, it's an adopted position of the council in relation to declaration of climate emergency. And that's how it should be referred to. The majority of council support that declaration. In relation to this current budget that we're operating under, it clearly states in its adopted position of this council, once again, we all adopted the budget, the potential purchase of 2 new electric vehicles, $140,000. It's allocated in the budget. My only disappointment about the purchase of the electric vehicle is there's not 2 being purchased, there's only 1. And yeah, fully support the CEO and the decision to purchase an electric vehicle. We've already heard that the charging station potential cost from that has come down from 17,000 to 2,000. It's making more and more sense. And unless they want to continue on a trajectory that sees more bushfires like we did last year, more droughts, then we need to start being an adopter and showing some leadership in relation to this. And whilst Councillor Trenery may smile at the prospect, we are having to do something as a community group to show some leadership around this.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Shepherd, you're next.
It's interesting that we're debating in general business, but anyway, I fully endorse what Councillor Goldsworthy said, that we're absolutely very aware that this is the direction we wanted to go, and we voted with a majority vote on the actions, and it was to buy a electric vehicle. And I agree, it is going to show great leadership when there's, okay, so none of us own electric vehicles, but the thing is, if the council is able to buy one and show people how it works, and we're able to have a charging station, it just shows people the possibilities.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. All right, anything else for general business? Councillor Murdoch.
No, I was just wanting to reiterate what the previous councillor said, is that I would like to add that if we're going on to, you know, renewables and things like that, it's not just for us, it's for the next generation. And, you know, I like to think that we're going to make the world a better place for our grandchildren, or I've got lots of grandchildren, so I really do want to see them, the world to be a better place. And one of those is by not using too many non-renewables.
All right. Okay. Thank you, councillors. Is there any other general business? All right. I'm going to close the meeting then. We've been asked by our administrator, CEO.
I may interrupt you when you're going to say the same thing. The administrator did message me to say, you got the same message?
I think we've probably all got it, but just to explain to the people who are watching, because he can't put us into a separate room, and it takes, I think there's a 30-second delay from when I declare the meeting finished to when the live streaming stops. So just ask councillors to maintain some dignity for 30 seconds. And I'm going to call the meeting to a close. Thank you, everybody. The next meeting is the 30th of June at 6:30 p.m. and it may even be a face-to-face by then, who knows. So thanks to everyone. And I think we managed to, once again, make this work with all the difficulty that it can cause. So good night to everybody, and we'll see you at the end of June.
Good night.
Wave goodbye.